Welcome to Go Baby Go TV. I'm Louie Hillman, joined by my partner, the Optimist guy, Brian Setzler. And today's episode is the interest rate illusion. Brian, higher interest rates, it's the talk of the town. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? What do you think?
It's a challenge. It's a good thing to be higher than where we were at near zero for lots of reasons. But it certainly will pose a challenge for our nation, given how much debt the federal government has managed to rack up over the last several administrations. Frankly, we're above 32 trillion. I think it's a pretty big number. When I was in college, they said, can you believe that the entire federal debt is $1 trillion?
If only we could go back to that place.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like, and it is, I mean, 1 trillion is too big for the human brain to comprehend of. So I guess 32 trillion is 32 times something your brain can't comprehend.
Well, and we hear, banks coming out with all these great promotional offers for CD rates. Obviously, people are talking about the treasury yields, even just the interest rate you're earning in your bank account. These are interest rates that were almost unthinkable 2 years ago. So that's what's 5 feet in front of the consumer, right? Or that's what they can see in front of them, and they're feeling good about it, right? And having a guaranteed interest rate, no risk, it feels good, right? I mean, how can you deny that? Yet at the same time, what is that doing to our country's debt, right? Which is a crisis. It really is a crisis. Some interesting facts that I put together here. Before COVID, our country was paying $1 billion a day just to service the debt, not pay down the debt, to pay the interest charges. After COVID, it's now over $2 billion a day in interest payments. There was another report that said that within 10 years on the path we're on, that the interest costs, again, just servicing the debt, will be the biggest program in our country's spending. That doesn't seem like a sustainable path to me.
No, it's not sustainable at all. I mean, there's a lot of macro problems there. One, the addiction to spending on behalf of our leaders has reached epic proportions. That's number one. Number two, there's nothing structural to force the repayment of the federal debt. Everything is an interest-only payment. I've never understood that. When a consumer buys a house, at least in 15 years or 30 years, if they stayed there in that same house, I know many people move multiple times, but the idea is that at the end of 30 years, your home will have a zero balance. There should be a constitutional amendment to force that to happen on the federal debt, because we are pushing this problem you're talking about to future generations. And the consequence only goes in one direction, and that means marginal income tax rates, national sales tax, and what I think is likely, because there is precedent. Right now, there's something like $25 trillion in IRA accounts and 401k accounts. If you add it up together, it's more than $25 trillion. That money is never been taxed. It's yet to have been taxed money. Okay, it's tax deferred money yet to have been taxed. Prior to 1995, there used to be a 5% surtax on any distribution coming out of a qualified plan. Well, in 1994, it would be pretty easy for people at that time, because I was in business, people would say, well, that doesn't affect me. I mean, I would never have enough money in my qualified plan to take more than $150,000 out of my qualified retirement plan. Well, sometime during the Bush administration, they eliminated that surtax. All I'm pointing out is that there is precedent for the IRS and Congress to be tempted to put a levy or an assessment or a different tax rate on future distributions from qualified plans. It is going to be on the table. It will be inevitable that going after qualified money is going to be on the table. And the number one reason why is because it will be a sitting duck. It will be a super easy target.
Yeah. And it just as for example, right? There's an advisor that I'm working with who has a client, and as they're going through the planning process, the bulk of their family savings are in tax deferred, government controlled retirement accounts, right? Like most Americans. And the advisor is trying to illuminate for the family that not only do they have the market risk of these investments, but they also have the tax risk because, as you're pointing out, all of this money is not yet taxed. They do not own all of these savings. The government has a lien on it. And as the advisor is trying to illuminate this for the client, the client keeps coming back to the fact that, yeah, but I can get 4% in a 9-month CD at my bank. And that is the challenge, right? As an advisor is, you've got a client that is looking 5 feet in front of them, and we're trying to help them look 5 years in front of them, right? Or maybe sometimes even another generation in front of where they are today. So it can be a challenge, right? Because the customer, the client, is just focused on the now, and the now feels good. We're earning higher interest rates, but there's a dark side to that.
Well, we're earning higher interest rates, but the invisible thief of inflation is robbing the purchasing power of all Americans. When you go to the grocery store and eggs are $6 or $7 a dozen, it's crazy, right? So it's everything. Anything that anybody wants to buy costs more now than it did 2 years ago. Everyone can agree with that. So on the one hand, you're right. People are excited about an uptick in the expected rate of return of safe money within an IRA account. On the other hand, they're complaining that everything they're buying costs more.
Yeah, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, well, they do have it both ways, but it really doesn't result in a better overall answer. When I was in high school, I had a paper route, Louie, and when I was doing my paper route, I would save up $1,000. In those days, to open a bank CD, you had to have $1,000, and that, you could get 12%, interest at the bank on a 1-year CD in those days. And so I would save up each 1,000 delivering papers. The way it worked in those days, you'd sell a paper for 20 cents and you'd keep 10 cents a paper. And then with all those little dimes, you over time save up $1,000, and then you open a bank CD paying 12%. Well, 12%, I thought I was a financial genius.
Well, it's a very good perspective, and we appreciate it. We'll end on this, and happy to share this article with anybody that's interested in it. The Peter Peterson Foundation released an article a few weeks ago, and a lot of interesting data in it. But the one fact that really stands out for me is going back to the ballooning debt crisis and how much we really are paying to service that debt. This group projects by that 2050, 40% of our country's revenues will go to servicing debt. That means for every dollar in tax raised, 40% of it just goes to interest payments. So the question I would ask you, or encourage you to ask your clients as you try to illuminate these problems: do you expect that the government will cut spending? Is it possible for the government to cut spending to address this declining amount of tax proceeds that can be used for spending on programs? Or will the government have no choice but to increase tax rates? Does anybody think the government's capable of reducing spending, Bryan?
They've not exhibited any indication of a willingness to reduce anything, you know. And so the consequence will be one of two things: either a reduction in the quality of standard of living of current Americans and future generations of Americans, or some sort of budgetary crisis. It's not looking really good unless you can grow your way out of the hole. You'd have to double the size of the U.S. economy in a robust way so that the amount of debt as a percentage of everything is a lesser percentage. And that's a tall order when you can't get anything to come on time that you order. In the middle, if we already have a supply line problem now, how are you supposed to sell twice of everything? And who are these people, imaginary people, are going to buy them?
Yeah.
So it is an issue. So, all we can do is do our best with clients and point that out and try to encourage as much tax-free planning to supplement their qualified retirement plan in any sort of responsible way, so they could be better insulated and better prepared to address what comes down the road.
Yeah. Well, this is wonderful. We hope you got value out of this. Go Baby Go TV. Join us next Monday to rev up your week and turbocharge your sales. Make it a great day.